continued from page 145. But it was of the old world which lay in a direction different from the one to which he was going now, a world obscure and remote even from Daulatpur, a world which he felt he had long left behind. He did not want to remember either Shamnagar or Daulatpur. Both had treated him badly. He was going away to a new world, to the wonderful world of a big city where there were ships and motors, big buildings, marvelous gardens, and he fancied rich people who just threw money about to the coolies in the street. End of page number 145. Now page 146. The train was running slowly past the oil tanks of the Burma Oil Company. Munnu wished it would hurry, for though secure, he was still a little afraid that someone might come and throw him out, and then he would have to go back to the vegetable market. No, he said to himself, I would kill myself rather than go back. I would prefer to die than to work there. He felt as most determined people feel when they have once conceived an idea that the frustration of his plan would be death. The engine was gathering speed. The previous rattling of the wheels had now become part of a uniform onward rush. The tall 5-storied houses of Daulatpur were left behind. The hot summer breeze came swishing in. The barking of the dogs was drowned in the roar of the engine. Munnu sat up on the canvas tent and looked round. Only the deep, dark foliage of fruit trees was distinguishable against the earth and the sky. The darkness had swallowed up the housetops, the minars, the domes, the irregular walls of Daulatpur. Lost lest his imagination conjured up visions of his past in the city, he lay back and sought to sleep and drown his memories in oblivion. The train halted only once at dawn, and Munnu's slumber was slightly broken by the shouting and stamping of passengers and the rattling of trains on the adjoining platforms. I wonder what station it is, he asked himself in his half-sleep, but he made no effort to open his eyes. Through the voices of hawkers crying out Hindu sweets, Mohammedan bread, hot tea, cold water, he could hear someone shout, Ambala Junction, Ambala City, change here for the Kalka line. The rhythmic tone of the beetle mingled with the rattling of the train. The cool breeze of the dawn soothed his brain. The world faded out. He woke at Delhi Central Station. In its tin roof gave no hint of the splendor of the capital of India as Munnu had imagined it from his books. Suddenly he looked out and saw men, women and children surging up to the platform, shouting and struggling as they sought to get into a compartment already crowded to overflowing. Munnu took advantage of this hubbub to jump on the offside and to relieve himself by a water pump among the intersecting railway lines. Then he came back and lay down for a second sleep. End of page number 146. Now page number 147. Come, I'll have to find room for you in a closed truck, as it will be hot here in the day. And here is some food which I have brought for you, came the elephant driver's advice. Munnu jumped down from the open carriage and followed his patron into a truck where hundreds of bamboo poles were stacked. Here's the food, said the driver. I will come and see you again at Ratlam. And he went. Munnu squatted on the hard, uneven seat provided by the bamboos without thinking of the prospect of having to sit there all day. As he began eating, the train steamed out of the station. Between chewing morsels of delicious fried bread and carrot pickle, Munnu thought of the generosity of the elephant driver. Why, he asked, are some men so good and others bad? Some like Prabha and the elephant driver, others like Ganpat and the policeman who beat me at the railway station. Then he gazed at the ruined fortresses, castles, shrines and mausoleums which dug their heels into the barren earth among the gnarled roots of trees, cactus and wild shrubs, fuming with a shimmering smoke without burning under the hateful glare of the all-consuming sun. The boy thought of the legend he had heard that Delhi was founded by a dynasty of kings who owed their origin to the sun. Perhaps the sun, the father of the Rajput kings who were dethroned by the Mohammedans, is taking revenge on the Muslims by blasting their forts and mausoleums. He said to himself naively. The emergence to his view of miles and miles of prim red brick buildings of Sir Edwin Lutyen's New Delhi, arranged like a fuel in the bonfire, confirmed the boy's vague feeling. But it seemed doubtful that the sun would burn the houses built by the Angrezi Sarkar, because he recalled the phrase taught in his history books that the sun never sets on the British Empire. The sight of the two peasant boys, puny against the vast landscape as they goaded their buffaloes behind their uncouth wooden ploughs through the open country full of dust and sand, brought him down to earth. He thought of the lives of these people who were cultivating the desert in a vain attempt to eke out a living. The steep rise of a cluster of hills of weathered stone and red clay barred his view of the world for a while. When the plain emerged to the view, Munnu's mind had become empty, and he just gazed at the monotone of sand which stretched for miles and miles and miles. End of page 147. Now page 148. Under the metallic glare of the sun, in utter barrenness except for the withered, parched, thorny bush interspread at occasional intervals, a sudden squall rose, gathering dust and sand in its lap, and rolling like a ball disappeared into a cave. Munnu felt it was the ghost of some Rajput warrior, as a superstition prevails in India that the spirits of the dead visit the earth in the form of dust storms. But he felt secure sitting in the train as it was speeding along in defiance of the vast earth and the vaster sky. In defiance even of the merciless sun which blasted the landscape with its malevolent fire. The railway is indeed a wonderful thing, he said to himself. If there hadn't been engines which pulled trains, I could never have escaped from Shamnagar to Daulatpur, and I certainly should never be going to Bombay, because one could not walk all that way. But it occurred to him suddenly to ask, not that I am actually going to Bombay, what shall I do there? I know nobody, and now how shall I find the work which brings 30 rupees a month, which the Coolie in the vegetable market spoke about? I would hate to be a beggar in the streets like the Bikaneris. The picture of himself walking about like the black men, women and children of the desert as they whined for a gift of a pice in the streets of Daulatpur came before his eyes with the horror of the degradation it involved. But I have a rupee in my loincloth, he said to himself. And did not the Coolie in the vegetable market say work was easy to get in Bombay? He tried to picture the streets of Bombay. Tall buildings appeared before his mind's eye like those clean-cut white stone buildings in the civil lines of Daulatpur. Beyond that and the conception of broad streets, his mind failed to imagine anything. The heat of the closed carriage and the rocking of the train made him fatigued and dizzy. He sought to counteract the urgings of sleep by staring out to the desert again, but the dancing shimmer of the heat waves struck a kind of awe into his brain. His eyes closed against his will and he succumbed to forgetfulness. The sudden jolt of his car awoke him in the afternoon to read Kota Junction. written on a black board in white Hindustani and English letters. He still dozed, however, bathed in sweat and rather stiff on the bamboo poles. End of page number 148. Now page number 149. I have brought you some sweets and milk, the elephant driver said, and here is a sack for you to lie on at night. I don't think you should sleep in the open truck tonight because the Parsi Sahibs of the company walk about on the platform in the evening. My elephant doesn't need as much care as you do, but I am glad to help you because when I was your age, a man helped me to steal a ride from Calcutta to Madras. Now be careful and don't fall out. Acha, Munnu said, looking greedily at the cream cakes, the sugar plums and the earthen jar full of milk. The train travelled again through the vast surface of the desert behind a brave, ferocious engine which whistled occasional warnings to the opposite trains passing like thunder with the speed of lightning. There was a subtle fascination about the desert under the scorching sun. It seemed to come to life with its illusory mirages of sand and its extraordinary sparse population of camels, tied tail to nose, nose to tail, as they threaded the wastes behind the Dhar men, D-O-U-R, Dhar men who struggled on foot against hunger and drought. An occasional collection of tents or a ruined outhouse reminded Munnu of the caravansarais he had seen on the outskirts of Shamnagar, and he tried to picture the rough life that the horse dealers and the buffalo stealers lived. But the horizon was limitless and the boy's eyes ached at the impact of the hot air which came trembling as if it had been belched out of a furnace. Towards evening the flat land gave way to sudden hills capped by forts and to a plateau where the day's strong colours melted lovingly on groves of acacia trees and low bushes at which stray goats nibbled and camels strained their long necks. And then, beyond the empty beds of muddy rivers, little clusters of huts appeared, men who saluted the train as they leant on their staffs, women who coyly covered their faces as they bore pitchers of milk on their heads, and children who stood with their eyes open in wonder, their fingers in their mouths, naked and unashamed. Munnu thought of the days of his childhood in the hills and recalled how often he had played around the cart roads with the distended bellied Bhishan, the lean Vishambhar, and that superior little Jai Singh. But the purple hills of Kangra were too closed in and there was no railway there to watch. It was as well. In spite of the pain I have suffered, he said to himself, to have come away from. End of page number 149. Now page number 150. That world. I am now going to Bombay and there must be wonderful things there. Many more wonderful things than there were in my village at Shamnagar or Daulatpur. As he cogitated, 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 the train left behind the mounds covered with brown grass, wild flowers, low scrub, and entered a glistening green valley bordered on the far end of the range of ochre-coloured mountains. The old fort of Chittor may be in those hills, he thought, where Padmini fought Alauddin, the slave king of Delhi, and where the heroes of Mewar donned yellow robes and performed Johar, and the women committed sati with the queen, rather than face dishonour at the hands of the conquerors. I wish I could see it. I wish I could go there, but I have no work there. I must get to Bombay and work. I wonder when I shall get there. The engine screamed into Ratlam, and with the suddenness of a surprise, the day died in the darkness. When it tore through the veil of the evening's violet air, time seemed to run past fast the telegraph poles, faster still as Munnu ate another meal which the elephant driver had brought him, and it ceased to exist at all as the clear, still night hung its low lanterns over the sand dunes and the hilltops. The sky was indigo black now, traced with a silvery sheen, and the world was full of queer wonder, which shimmered eerily in the shadows and wrapped itself around Munnu, like the awful stillness which the ghosts appear out of nothing. He fell asleep, cooled by whiffs of breeze, on the sack which padded the uneven surfaces of the bamboo poles. He woke to a rich world of palm trees and casuarina and neem and large cultivated fields at Baroda. The special train of the Maharaja, painted white and reflecting the gloss of polish which shamed everything beside it, occupied Munnu's attention, and a few alpaca-coated, white-trousered men who wore golden caps on their heads and black boots like those of the Babu at Shamnagar. I could never get boots like those before, he said to himself, but if I get work in Bombay, the first thing I shall do will be to buy boots. The fertile green plains, which now stretched for miles, dotted here and there with sudden steep rocks, capped by giant temples and by huge buildings with tall funnels emitting smoke, filled him with a sense of a tense nervousness. He felt he was nearing his destination, and he doubted whether he would be able to find work. As the silver line of a long watercourse, which seemed to have end of page 150, now page 151, no end, glimmered in the distance and broke up into the multitude of starry particles. His heart lightened for a moment with the joy of seeing the sea for the first time in his life. Soon the blue waterway ran at his feet below the railway bridges, and his heart throbbed. The excitement of his newly discovered joy added its weight to the feeling of fear that momentarily suppressed, burdened his soul. He shook his body violently in an attempt to work off the silent, brooding load of terror that almost dragged him down. He rose from the crumpled sack on which he had couched and come to the window. The sea breeze fanned his face, but left a moist film of perspiration behind. He mopped himself with the edge of his dirty tunic. The particles of sand on his shirt irritated his soft, warm cheeks. He passed his hand through his hair and brought out small particles of coal dust on his palm. He felt exasperated. 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 He sighed. He could have cried. So alone and uncertain he felt. But he sat back and resigned himself to the contemplation of the magical landscape of green fields washed clean in the sunlight and the shimmering dews of the water from the sea. I shall try and look for some man from the northlands as soon as I get there. But how will I be able to find anybody in such a big city as this? He saw that Bombay had already begun as he read the signboards on the walls of factories announcing in Roman letters, as well as the hieroglyphs of a language curious to him, difficult names like Rustamji, Jamshedji, Karimbhai, and the letters Bombay. Never throughout his long journey of 2,000 miles from north to south had he seen the outskirts of a city extend for as many miles as this colossal world he was entering. The train rushed past groves of dates and palms past the golden domes of temples, the long minarets of mosques, the tall spires of churches, the flowery facades of huge mansions, past mills, burning ghats, graveyards, past stoneyards, past fish drying sheds, past dyeing grounds over which lay miles of newly colored silks and calicoes, past flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cows and buffaloes, past throngs of men, women and children dressed in the clothes of the oddest, most varied shapes and colors. The panic in his soul grew, the motion of his belly quickened, there was a parched taste in his mouth. His eyes glanced furtively. End of page 151, now page 152. From this side to that. He fidgeted on his hard seat and lifting his legs he felt stiff and uncomfortable. His brain whirled with excitement. His blood welled so fast that it seemed to him he was running. His face paled. His body was covered with sweat. His head was empty and dark.